Alrighty, Johnny Tremain by Esther Forbes, illustrated by Lynd Ward, published by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. And we are in chapter 3, An Earth of Brass, section 4. So Johnny just went to see John Hancock to inquire about a position working for him and helping, because Johnny has a lot of pride and he wants to do something that's a valuable job, not a purposeless job or low level. Remember, he still is very confident, has a big kind of ego, and so he's laughed out of the shop. Very hurtful situation. But Mr. Hancock sends his servant helper with a purse of money to give to the poor boy who just came looking for a job. And Mr. Hancock says he wishes him well. So Johnny took the purse. He thinks it's copper. It's actually silver. So section 4, let's find out what happens. The thought of Lavinia Light gorging herself to death, if it pleased her, on fine foods had started the gastric juices in his stomach an hour ago. He had had no breakfast, and for supper the night before, only one salt alewife and a mug of milk. I don't even know what an alewife is. Sounds kind of gross. It was noontime, and he craved food, not the mere coarse bread, cheese, ale, and apples which had always made up the large part of his diet, but rare and interesting things, such as he had smelled cooking in rich people's houses and the best taverns, but had never tasted. First, he tormented his hunger by going from one tavern kitchen to the next to see which smelled the best. At the Bunch of Grapes, a maid was basting a roast of beef. A spicy pudding was bubbling on the hearth. At the King's Coffee House, a suckling pig was so crisp and brown it was fairly bursting. He almost drooled at this pig, but walked on. And everywhere he smelled chocolate and coffee. Oh, he had never in his life tasted either. He stopped in the kitchen of the Afric Queen. What he saw there made him feel he had swallowed a small live kitten. But he could almost enjoy these pangs, for in his pocket was Mr. Hancock's silver. Any minute he could assuage that kitten, that means satisfy the kitten, and so to the Cromwell Head and back again to Union Street. His mind was made up. He would dine at the Afric Queen. For here he had seen maids roasting innumerable small squabs. Those are like little mini chickens or like mini hens, each stuffed with fragrant dressing and wrapped in bacon. Oh my gosh. And he had seen pastries, apple, mince, pumpkin, plum tarts coming out of the brick oven. The crust on them was an inch thick and so short and flaky it looked like scorched tissue paper. Well, kitten, he said contentedly to his stomach as he took his seat humbly in the kitchen, where grooms and such were fed while their betters ate in the dining rooms, you're going to have more than a saucer of milk today. How'd you like, say, 5 of those little squabs? But when he began to give his order to the serving maid, she giggled and ran off for the landlady. Now, boy, this lady said to him firmly, you just show me the color of your money. So he's ordering big, and she's like, you don't have the money to pay for this. Satisfied, he showed her the money. She grunted and told the maid to serve the little master. This young girl was hardly older than Scylla. She could not help laughing at the things he ordered. The 5 little squabs, 5. 3 of each kind of pastry, 3. A wreath of jellied eels, because she said it was a specialty of the house. A tipsy parson, white bread tied into little knots, buttered and baked. They're telling you what a tipsy parson is right here. And a pot of coffee and another of chocolate. When Johnny saw a dish being prepared in the kitchen for some diner in the other room, he would call for some of that, and she giggled again and fetched it for him. There was only one disappointment. The smell of coffee had always attracted him. He was disappointed at the bitter taste. The chocolate, however, was even better than he had dared to hope. Oh, yum, that sounds so amazing. But when he came to pay, he was chagrined to find so much of his money had gone to fill and overfill his stomach. The kitten was no longer gnawing inside him, trying to get out. In fact, it was no longer a kitten. I feel as if I had swallowed a Newfoundland dog and it had died on me. A Newfoundland dog, if you look it up, a huge breed of dog. So he basically stuffed himself sick. What a fool he had been. He thought suddenly of Rab. That Rab wouldn't have let himself go so. And for the first time, standing in the cobbled stable yard behind the inn, he realized that the back of the little building he saw beyond the Afric Queen stables was the printing shop of the Boston Observer on Salt Lane. He wanted to cross through the backyards, go to see that Rab, but thought better of it. Not until he came as a friend and equal. Not as a beggar, no. He decided he would buy himself some shoes. His own flapped as he walked, his toes showed, but he hadn't liked it when Jehu had referred to him as a boy with broken shoes. As he left the cobbler's, his new shoes squeaking on his feet, he saw a peddler pushing a barrow of limes up Cornhill. Fine lemons and limes, lemons and limes. There was nothing in the world Isana so craved as limes, and Mrs. Lapham could not buy them for her. They were too dear. But sometimes sailors from the Indies or storekeepers would give her one because she was so beautiful and would hug and kiss anyone who gave her a lime. Johnny filled the pockets of his jacket and breeches with limes. Now for Scylla. He could not buy her a gray pony, a gold necklace, nor a little sailboat. He went to a stationer's. There he found a book with the most wonderful pictures of Calvinistic martyrs, dying horrible but prayerful deaths. He glanced at the text. With his help, she would soon be able to read it. Next, he bought pastel crayons, but he passionately regretted all those squabs. He had no money left to get her drawing paper. He spent it all. His new shoes fitted to a nicety. If the Newfoundland dog was a heavier tenant in his stomach than the kitten, it was more restful. His pockets were full of fine gifts. He whistled as he walked and entered the Lapham kitchen, ready to tell of his adventure with Mr. Hancock. The womenfolk had spent all day paring apples, threading them on strings, preparing to dry them for the winter. Even Mrs. Lapham looked tired. The lazy apprentice, bursting in, happy for the first time in 2 months, irritated her. Then she saw his new shoes. "Johnny Tremain," she cried, "what have you been up to?" "What?" "You wicked, wicked boy! Oh, I declare you are going to bring disgrace on us all." He did not understand. "Them shoes!" she roared. "You never got them honestly. You've taken to thieving. I'm going to tell your master. He'll call a constable and then see if you dare us not tell where you stole them. You've just gone from worse to worse. You're going to get whipped for this, set in the stocks. You're going to jail. You'll end up on the gallows." He let her scold, shake her wattles at him. As she flounced out of the room, Madge and Dorcas saw their chance to escape for a moment. All afternoon, Frizzle, Jr., the leather dresser, had been standing outside on the street waiting for one or the other to come out. Frizzle, Jr., was an accepted suitor. That means he likes one of the girls. But no one knew whether it was Madge or Dorcas he was after. Mrs. Lapham didn't know. The girls didn't know. Frizzle, Jr. himself did not seem to know. Both Madge and Dorcas were now wild to get out and after him. It looked as though whichever one was not Mrs. Frizzle would end up Mrs. Tweedy. Johnny stood before Scylla and Isana, who had huddled together in a corner of the settle like frightened little animals as their mother accused Johnny of theft. He smiled, and they smiled. He was so happy about his gifts that he forgot his misfortunes. Scylla said happily, "I know you didn't steal." "Of course not. Look, girl, I've got crayons for you." He put them on the table. "For me?" "And a book with pictures. Now, Syl, the printing is so easy. I think you can almost teach yourself to read." "Oh, Johnny, look at that funny little man. See, he's got tiny little buttons on his coat. Oh, I never thought to own a book with pictures." He began fishing limes out of his frayed pockets. Isana jumped about him like a puppy. "Limes, limes!" she cried. They began to fall on the floor, rolling in all directions. All three children went down after them. Scylla was almost happier over Isana's pleasure than her own. Johnny was happiest of all. For the first time, he completely forgot his crippled hand. It was all as if nothing had happened, and he and Scylla and Isana were all one again. He was pretending not to give the limes to the little girl. He was going to put them back in his pockets, but she knew they were for her. She wrapped herself about him, hugging him, kissing the front of his shirt. This was as far as she could reach. He started to pick her up in his arms, hold her over his head, until she said, "Please, pretty." Suddenly, Isana's delighted cries changed to hysterical screams. "Don't touch me! Don't touch me with that dreadful hand!" Johnny stopped. It was the worst thing anyone had said to him. He stood like stone, his hand thrust back into his pocket. Scylla froze too, half under the kitchen table, a lime in her hand. "Oh, Isana, how could you?" The nervous child went on screaming. "Go away, Johnny, go away! I hate your hand!" Scylla slapped her, and she burst into tears. So he went away. So sad, I just want to cry. We'll get back to it, but that's the end of this video. So be a subscriber and find out what happens next. Bye now.